Have you submitted hundreds of applications and heard nothing back? Well, it's most likely because your resume sucks. Think about it. When an entry level opening is just swamped with literally hundreds of applicants, recruiters just don't have the time to dig to learn more about you. So your resume has to be clean, your resume has to be clear, and your resume has to be relevant. Which is why today I'm talking with Brian Pullium, the founder of Refactor Coaching, where we discuss the top 3 common resume pitfalls for early career software engineers and how you can iterate on it to increase your recruiter response rate. All right, Brian, thank you for joining me today. Before we get started, why don't you give our listeners a summary of your background?
Sure. Great to be here, Eric. Big fan of the podcast. My name's Brian Pullium. I am the founder of refactorcoaching.com, currently a career coach for people in the tech industry. Been in tech for about 26 years, which is about 1,000 years the way tech goes. And I have about 17 years of coaching experience. My roles have varied from software engineer, TPM, and manager, analyst, and the most prominent companies I've worked at that people would recognize would be Microsoft and Zillow and Coinbase. So helped about 50 people last year land tech roles in this climate, and have been mentioned in a few podcasts such as yours, and also some media coverage in New York Times and Dice and Today.com.
Well, really appreciate you being on the prestigious background that you have. And you spent last year helping developers find new jobs. That is what we're all about here at the Junior Jobs Podcast, trying to help new developers break into tech and find that first role. So let's start there. So what advice do you have for those that are early in their career? Any frameworks that you feel would have a huge ROI learning early on?
Yes, actually, there's something in big tech that a lot of engineers get accustomed to called experimentation. So for those who may not have gone through this before, Amazon.com and all these other big websites are running hundreds or thousands of small little experiments to try and tweak and optimize for the things they want, adding more things to your cart, buying more things, buying them more often. But this experimentation framework is not something that should just be limited to helping other people like your company you work for be successful. You should apply it to yourself. So the scientific method is pretty cool. And what we know when we do some experimentation is that what works best is often not what we would think. It's very unintuitive because humans are involved. So if they're using it to make billions of dollars, like you should use it to help land jobs. So since I have such an experimentation background, having been a TPM for 10 plus years, I started using experiments to figure out what would work with my clients in terms of like what resume formats work well, how to tell stories in an interview, how to network with people and get them to want to help you, all of those things. I believe having those actual tactics be based on real results is the best thing you can do for your career. But you don't necessarily need an expert's help to do that. You can start doing that yourself.
It was especially hard when you go on LinkedIn and you hear everybody giving all these different types of information that oftentimes contradict with each other. Oh, who do you listen to? What do you do? Well, you don't have to take people's words for it. You can try it yourself, experiment a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Your audience might be familiar with Mythbusters. There's the host there, his name is Dan Savage, and he has a quote, this great quote. It's about something like, remember kids, the only difference between science and farting around is writing things down, which is very true. A/B testing or experimentation, it sounds really complicated. But if you have a version of your resume and you just track the jobs you submitted to and you track how many times a recruiter calls you back, that conversion rate is a really easy way to see whether the resume is doing its job, right? It's really the goal of the document is not to get you hired. It's really to get a call back from the recruiter, especially in a bigger tech company.
Well, I expect some patterns probably emerge after you start running a lot of these different experiments on your resumes. What are some of the common pitfalls that you see when you're looking at resumes?
Yeah, I think there are 3 that stand out the most that apply to earlier career, to junior jobs. One is something that I discovered having helped 50 or 60 people land jobs last year that I didn't expect. When I have made resumes in the past, historically, it has been to make myself appear impressive to the person who I'm going to report to, like my boss, right? Well, as it turns out, at most big tech companies, by the time your potential boss sees your resume, you already have an interview. And if you optimize your resume too much for your boss, the recruiter doesn't understand what they're reading. And it makes it harder for you to actually get a call back from the recruiter. So I'd say pitfall number 1 is making your resume too much for the hiring manager. Like making a resume 70% for the recruiter. So it's simpler words and it's easy to understand and really quick to scan. That's what's been working really well in the experiments I've been conducting. So the goal of this resume is to get a callback. And I've been teaching my clients to think of a resume as a targeted ad, mostly for the recruiter, not actually for the boss. There's some survivor bias there where, the best resume that a hiring manager would love, they often never see it because the recruiter doesn't pass it along to them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the common joke that recruiters don't necessarily know that the difference between a new JavaScript framework and a Pokemon, right? They're
Yes.
just terms that they were asked to hire for, and they don't necessarily know what they are.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the analogy? Java is to JavaScript like straw is to strawberry, right? It's like just because this word sounds similar doesn't mean they mean the same things. Other pitfalls I can think of. If you're early in your career and you have experience, the number one risk that an employer is going to have in hiring you is that you're an unknown quantity. Like they can't look at your resume and say, oh, look, you've worked at 3 different companies and you've been there at least a year. I can't rely on their ability to evaluate you to make my job a little bit easier. This is why FANG level experience on a resume is so coveted, right? Because if you can work there, it means you must be good. But there's a lot of early talent people I work with who bury their experience like all the way at the bottom of their resume. And the challenge is recruiters are some of the most overworked and underpaid people in all of tech, right? And they're not really in a position to evaluate you, but they're looking at like 200 resumes a day. So you got to put the most compelling things that are going to make you stand out at the top. So any experience you have needs to be the very first thing. Like I know you just got out of school, so you want to put education at the top, but that works against you so strongly. Like anything that's going to make you stand out is going to be something beyond your degree. Like what projects did you work on? I always say experience and then projects and then education. As long as you have anything in those buckets, that's the order they should be in.
So then the next question that I'm typically asked is, so then how do you get that experience if you first need experience to get a job, but you can't get a job because you don't have experience? What would you say somebody right coming out of an education program, whether it's boot camp or college or self-taught, and
Yeah.
what do you put as experience then?
Yeah. So just like with the experimentation, you don't need someone else's expertise to go do things and see if they work. And so I always encourage people, especially when they're early career, pick a problem that annoys you that you would spend time on fixing. Like this idea that you aren't going to code a lot until someone pays you. I think that's a trap that people fall into. You should be coding every day while you're looking for a job and working on something that annoys you. Like I made an app before because my wife would give me a grocery list and I hated that I didn't know where anything was in what aisle, And so I actually literally created an app so that when I added things, it would sort them into the right order so I could get out of the grocery store quickly because I hate going to the grocery store.
Oh, that's
Now,
a beautiful idea.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I could literally measure how long it took me to go through the grocery store before I made the app, right? And like how frustrated I was when I left because I got to find where the heck bouillon cubes are. Gosh, where is that? I never find that. And then I can measure how long it took me to go through the grocery store after I had the app. And I could create a very clear, like I saved myself 35 minutes every time I go to the grocery store. That could be twice as fast as it normally is. And by showing these before and afters with measurable metrics on a pet project, you're really demonstrating, even though you're early in your career, that you understand writing code is not really worth anything to a company. They see it as a proxy to delivering business impact, right? They don't pay you because you write code. They pay you because the code you write helps them earn money, right? And stay alive.
And while years of experience doesn't always necessarily equate to skill level, it is a useful proxy when you're skimming, 200 resumes in a day and you got to get through them quick.
Yeah.
So
Standing
so
out
then
requires standing out. You have to kind of do things differently in this market because there's a lot more applicants for a lot fewer jobs these days.
so to be explicit then, that example that you shared is a personal project.
Mhm.
You would list that under a work experience section on the resume, or would you just call it experience and list this as like a self-employed freelance? Like how would you necessarily list
How would
something
I
like that as
message that on a
experience?
resume?
Yeah.
I would probably list it as a project because I typically think of experience as a section where someone pays me to go do something. Right?
Okay. Okay.
However, if I have a combination of experience and projects, like I was an intern for a while and then I worked in the lab at the computer, and chronologically those are interleaved, I might just have a section on my resume that says experience and projects. And I show that not only have I been paid to do some work, but also I'm excited about being a software developer so much that I'm do this in my spare time. Because as an interviewer, I'm going to see that shopping app and we're going to go deep on that app. And not many people are going to do that on their resume. So that's going to help me stand out compared to other
Yeah, they'll
applicants.
bury it on the bottom then.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts then of if somebody, the only work experience they have is not related to the industry that they're applying into? You know, they've been a barista, they've worked fast food or in retail. You mentioned putting experience at the top. Would you put non-relative work items at the top of that resume, or how would you message that?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. So in a case where people are going through a pivot, I usually recommend two things. One, combining experience slash projects as a title. And then that way you can put more recent projects at the top because the first few things the recruiter reads better be pretty relevant to the role you're applying for.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise they're confused. Like why do you work at Subway and you're applying for a job at Amazon, right? But by listing projects as the first two entries and then having professional experience down below, you're letting the recruiter's eyes go over the most qualified aspects of your resume because it's near the top. So that's the first thing I would do. Secondly, even for people who are later career, they sometimes will pivot from say like engineer to TPM. They're like, I don't want to write code anymore. I want to help. I want to do the PM part of this. I want to be a product leader. So they will have the same challenge. They have 6 years of software engineering experience, but they don't have PM experience. Having a couple bullet points at the top that explains the story. So when they get to the experience, they're not confused. You know, you can actually message 6 years of software engineering background as a real positive thing when you're going for a TPM role, like a technical product manager role. But if you don't explain it, you're leaving it up to the recruiter to see whether or not they see the value in what you're describing. It's better you learn to tell that story on your resume.
Yeah, the surprising part about this when I was going through my last job search, which prompted a lot of the advocacy that I do now, is just how much of it is more marketing and sales as opposed to getting better at your craft. At a certain point, you're good enough. You have enough experience. Yeah, everybody's the same. But the people that get hired are those that are the best at selling their experience and positioning it well.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Eric. You know, I tell my clients this, like, you know, I have two CDs. I'm going to use these as a Venn diagram. So imagine this circle is what you need to know to do good in your job. And imagine this circle are the skills you need to land your job. Now, in a perfect world, these would overlap with each other. Spoiler alert, they do not overlap with each other 100%. In fact, in software, they probably only lap about 50%, which means there are tactics to learn to get the job that then you are probably not going to use in order to be a good software developer. And so acknowledging that you can be a great engineer and struggle to land a job, it does not mean you're not a great engineer. It just means there are different things for you to learn, especially in the market we see right now.
It doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be here. It doesn't mean that it's not your time. It just means there's a new skill, not code related, that you got to figure out and
Yep.
adapt to. So then back on the topic of pitfalls on the resume, you've talked about a few good highlights so far.
Mhm.
Are there any other common pitfalls that you see with new developers, entry level talent?
Yeah. So this one's a little harder because I know that a lot of people hear, oh, I should network. You know, I need to network. Network is your net worth. You know, you hear all these buzz phrases. It's true. I will tell you that the people that you know and the people that you can reach out to makes a huge difference in your career over the long term. But it's kind of like farming, right? You know, you plant seeds and you don't expect fruit tomorrow. So I would encourage people, one of the best things you can do for your career long term is start spending 20 or 30 minutes a week reaching out to people who work at the companies you want to work for. And in a perfect world, you know them directly, but they could also be a friend of a friend, like what we on LinkedIn call a second level connection. My personal network of first level connections on LinkedIn is maybe about 3,000 people, which sounds like a lot. But when you look at my second level connection, do you want to take a guess what my second level connection is?
Wow, so 3,000 first level, 9,000 triple.
So it's 2 million people that are exist in
Okay,
my
never
second
mind.
level network. So the odds, so it's, you don't need to know 2 million people, but if you connect with people that work at these companies and you ask them what it's like to work there and you ask them for some advice and you listen to what they have to say, you'd be really surprised at how much of an advantage you can get if you don't stop, but just by clicking the submit button, because everybody's doing that, right? Hundreds of people are clicking submit. If you can just find one person to spend 5 minutes answering a few questions. I had a client do this 2 months ago, and he realized at the end of a 5 minute chat, he was talking to the hiring manager for the job he just applied for. Um, there's no way that he's not at the top of the candidate list after that experience. And sure enough, he got the job, probably because he reached out and created this networking opportunity. So it's not like you're guaranteed that that will always work, but I guarantee you won't get that opportunity if you're not trying to contact people as much as you are trying to land an offer.
So that outreach, though, you mentioned reaching out and asking for advice, or what do
Mhm.
you say in that outreach to increase your likelihood of getting a response and starting a conversation?
Yeah. So this is something I run experiments on as well, because any good PM will tell you like what we think is not always the best idea, right? Like the best solutions are very counterintuitive. Most people, when they try to network with somebody, they're trying to like take things for themselves. And you see it in the way they ask questions. They'll say, can you tell me about this? Or what are the benefits like at Google? Or all of these questions that suggest they're not thinking about the person they're asking the questions of, right? So if there's one piece of advice for that, what I call a coffee chat, which is this networking thing we would do, is make it about their favorite topic. Like I'll give you 3 guesses what their favorite topic is.
For how to find out their favorite topic? Or
No, like everybody has the same favorite topic. Can you guess what it is?
favorite topic? Everybody likes talking about themselves. Does
Yes,
that
that's it.
count?
Ding,
Okay. Yeah.
full marks. Good. So,
Yeah.
like, the way to do a coffee chat is to make the conversation about them and to ask them, like, what do you like about working there? Like, what do you wish you knew when you started? Like, what made you decide to move from wherever they were before to where they are now? Like, what made you decide to move from Zillow to Google or Meta to Amazon? When you give someone a miniature TEDx podium and let them talk about themselves, and then you ask them for advice at the end, not feedback, but if you ask them for advice at the end, you'd be surprised how helpful people are willing to be, especially because a lot of these people are getting $5,000 if they refer you and you get the job. Come on, let's not forget there's a monetary aspect to them helping you out. But why would you not want to create that opportunity for yourself? It turns out you just have to make it not about you to put them in a comfortable place with a little bit of humility and show them that you're willing to listen. And then sometimes they'll tell you who the hiring manager is for the job. They'll tell you who the recruiter is. Or like my client before, you find out you're talking to the hiring manager themselves.
I mean, you make it all about them, and at the end of the day, you get what you want at the end
Mhm.
as well, and that's a wonderful suggestion. So, if someone wanted to follow up with you to learn more about these pitfalls on their resume, or to get your help with the resume coaching services that you have, how could they get in contact with you?
The name of my career coaching company is refactorcoaching.com. Easy to find me online, just refactorcoaching.com. Specifically for people who are earlier talent, I have a customized one-on-one resume workshop that lasts about 45 minutes where we bring your resume. You actually send it to me basically the day before. And in that 45 minutes, we revamp it using all of the results from all of the experiments that I've run with about 20 recruiters and about 50 clients over the past year or two. So one client sent me his resume and I asked him what his conversion rate was, the number of percentage of the time recruiters called him back. It was around 1.5%. And when we reformatted the resume in the 4 weeks following, he had a 30% response rate. So now I can't guarantee those kinds of results because that guy had 8 years of experience. But the thing to learn is not that you're not smart enough. It's not that you don't work hard. It's that the tactics you're using to get a callback just need to be refined. It's like swinging a butter knife at a tree. It's like you could probably chop the tree down, but that's a lot of work. And what we need to do is swap out that butter knife for an axe, and you'll get a lot more results. And you won't have to like apply for 1,000 jobs or whatever these ridiculous like volumes are that people see. When you don't see results with what you're doing, the goal is not to do more of the same. The goal is to learn how to do things differently. So I offer this 45-minute resume workshop. You walk out of it with the exact format I've used with my 50 clients to help them land jobs last year. And the investment there is $300. There's a link I'm sure you'll put in the podcast for this. And for people who sign up and they choose junior jobs as how they heard about this resume workshop, I'm also including a free LinkedIn profile review. As it turns out, the LinkedIn profile is like a snare in the wilderness. You don't know what kind of recruiter is going to come along that you want to catch. And so there's some slightly different tactics we use on the LinkedIn profile that we don't use on the resume because we can't target it as much because we're not applying for that job.
Very good. Brian, thank you so much for offering that free LinkedIn profile review as part of your program. That'll be a great benefit to, I'm sure, everybody listening here.
Oh, yeah. Happy to help shortcut some of the longer paths I've taken in my own career.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining, Brian. That's all the time that we have for today. So thank you to everybody that's listening, and we will see you all next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Junior Jobs Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, as that helps us reach more developers in need. And don't forget to check the show notes for details on today's sponsor and other job search services that we provide.